Hello all. I've been working this weekend to catch up on your IRAC writing assignments. Overall, I think most of you would benefit by going over the slides either in the handout, PowerPoint file, or video from week one. I've provided individual feedback to each of you concerning areas of confusion, and I'll include a summary later in this video as well. I have also finished grading your extra credit assignment to complete the online course orientation. I'm pleased to see that the vast majority of you took advantage of the opportunity to brush up on your online navigational skills, not to mention the extra credit points. Your discussion regarding the woman suing McDonald's because she spilled hot coffee on herself in the Chapter 5 forum topic was quite interesting. I really enjoyed the sidebar discussion that developed on the topic of political correctness. In my not so humble opinion, if one wishes to effectively communicate, one should not be bound by conventions designed to avoid offense, real or imagined, or as a guise for censorship. George Orwell called it newspeak in his novel 1984. If you haven't read that book or read it lately, it's a quick read and one that can be very chilling, particularly on this topic. Concise language is essential for the creation and judicial administration of the law. Thus, political correctness can be checked at the door in this class. I don't agree with each and every opinion expressed in the forum or in your IRAC papers, but I do respect them, and I understand that reasonable people can reasonably agree to disagree. I want to go over a few important points in Chapter 6 and remind you to take advantage of the detail that's available in the text as well as the PowerPoint handout that is posted in the resources area. Following that, we'll discuss this week's forum assignment, and I would also note that you will not have an IRAC writing assignment for Chapter 6. Big sigh of relief, right? Instead, you might use that time to study and review Chapters 1, 2, 5, and 6 for our exam. Now, the exam will open tomorrow as I record this. That will be on Tuesday, February 2nd, and it'll be due by the end of the day next Monday, February 8th. Now, I want to point out that these exams can be taken at any time within that window, but once you begin, you must complete the exam at a single session. Feel free to make use of the text, your notes, and any handouts. What you may not do is work together with other students. That's a violation of ethics that unleashes severe penalties if caught. So, good luck to you. Further details are found in your coursework area, and as always, if you have questions or issues that come up, be sure to email me as soon as they happen rather than waiting until the last moment. And finally, at the end of this lecture, I'll review for you the important elements of briefing law cases using the IRAC method. So let's jump into Chapter 6 now. And as compared to everything we've talked to up to this point, last chapter in particular was focused on civil law. Chapter 6 gets into criminal law, and there are some differences, and this is an important chapter for you to read through. A lot of this I think you'll find is somewhat familiar, but there are some details you'll need to pay attention to. Now, what's interesting about this new edition of this particular text is this chapter also has a much more focused approach on talking about criminal law with regard to the cyber world. There's no question the criminal law system is far from perfect, and anyone who tries to take the position that it is perfect is not really grounded in reality. In spite of all these problems, though, the underlying goal of our court system is to balance the rights of the defendant with that of the larger society. The measure of a free society is in many ways how much we're willing to harness the government. Too much freedom in the hands of the sovereign, that is the government, may bring about too little freedom to those who deserve it most, we the people. On page 119 in the text, we begin discussion of cyber crimes. And these are tough because it's really hard to pin down who is the victim, who is the perpetrator, even more so than in, shall we call it, brick and mortar crime. One important example is identity theft. People have been taking on others' identities long before the internet, but the online environment, and especially the growth of online commerce, has become the dark alley where muggers do not need to ever meet you face to face to lift your wallet and remove its valuables. The Information Infrastructure Protection Act and the Identity Theft and Assumption Deterrence Act are two laws passed by Congress to give existing criminal statutes a clearer authority in cyberspace. You want to read that section very carefully. And keep in mind, for our forum discussion, we'll be looking at case 6.3, Maryland v. King, on pages 121 and 122. They'll serve as the topic starter, and it really does get into some issues that pertain to crime online. Okay, now that takes care of business for this week. You have the rest of the chapter to go through. Read the entire chapter. And a reminder, once again, no IRAC paper this week, but those assignments will resume next week. And so what follows is a brief summary of the IRAC briefing I provided in week 1. Judges applied legal reasoning in reaching a decision in a case. It is a very tightly formatted process called critical legal thinking. This case study briefing method that we use mirrors that process. IRAC is an acronym shorthand for Issue, Rule, Analysis, and Conclusion. What is the legal issue in the case? That is, what is the point being appealed? This is usually 1 or 2 sentences. The rule of law that is being contested. This is generally a sentence. The analysis of the case is formatted in outline or bullet point form. In this course, we prefer the outline form, highlighting each of the elements of the law that are in dispute in the case. And finally, the conclusion. It's a brief 1 or 2 sentence summary of the court's ruling. There are some additional elements you will need to complete your paper. Let us use as an example the 2001 U.S. Supreme Court case that pitted the Professional Golfers Tour against one of its players, Casey Martin. In Martin's bid under the Americans with Disabilities Act to be permitted use of a golf cart in PGA tournaments. Seen here are the first several paragraphs in the court's decision. It runs multiple pages. To check out the entirety of the court's decision, see IRAC sample case PGA Tour v. Martin in the bookmark section of resources. Now, let us check out those additional elements I said must be included in your IRAC briefs. Just as with any academic paper, you must cite sources. The IRAC brief cites the appeals court case under discussion. That's it. In this example, it's the 2001 U.S. Supreme Court case on the appeal of the PGA versus Casey Martin. The citation format is specific to legal briefs, and like any citation, is designed to point the reader toward the original source. Most IRAC cases you will be assigned will already have this information readily available. In this example, we see the case is PGA Tour Inc. v. Martin, called the caption. And then we see 532 U.S. 661, 121 SCT, Supreme Court, 1879, 179, L.ed. 3rd, 904. Now, this is the citation, the unique identifier of the case. We don't need to go into what all that stuff means, as all this will be provided for you for the most part. All right? And then the next line, Webb, 2001 Lexus 4115, 2001. This shows the case was found within the Lexus legal database, and the case was adjudicated in 2001. And then the final line is Supreme Court of the United States. That's the final line in the citation identifying the court deciding the appeal. Next, we list the key facts, in other words, the essential background in the case, using an outline or bullet format. In this case, there are 5 key elements of the case. The appellant and appellee are named. Why Martin requested the rule exception. That the PGA refused. And that Martin sued on the basis of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now we dive into the IRAC portion of the IRAC brief. The issue. In this case, does the ADA require the PGA to accommodate Martin by allowing him to use a golf cart when the rules state golfers in professional competition must walk the course? As you can see, this is very brief, only one sentence. Similarly, the rule of law is succinct. Appeals courts do not concern themselves with the evidence from the original trial. Rather, they are looking at whether the law is applied fairly and constitutionally in the case. In this example, the statement is simply a very brief summary of the pertinent portion of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This too in your papers will be brief and usually only a sentence or two in length. The analysis section will usually be the longest, since this summarizes the court's thinking as it rendered its decision. As with the key facts, the analysis uses an outline or bullet point format to set off the key elements. In this case, the brief mentions 8 key points as to why the majority of the U.S. Supreme Court felt the ADA did in fact cover Mr. Martin's physical limitation, and that doing so does no harm to the integrity of professional golf competition. The final step is the conclusion. Again, it is very brief, usually one sentence or two stating the court's decision. In this instance, that the PGA must allow Martin the use of a golf cart in competition, affirming a lower court decision. I hope this, as well as the comments I sent to those of you who are having difficulties, will make your task easier as we continue writing IRAC briefs throughout the rest of the semester. Again, no IRAC writing assignment for Chapter 6. There is a forum discussion and your first exam covering Chapters 1, 2, 5, and 6. Have a great week, everyone.